This meeting of the Board of Trustees is called to order at 6:05 p.m. We have a quorum with Carlos Bustillos, Richard Cuder, Cruz Ochoa, Catherine Lucetto, Mike Rosales, and myself, Connie Woodruff. Sotero Ramirez is unable to attend. Trustee Rosales, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Good morning, silence, please. Thank you. Be seated.
Dr. Delatorre, will you please lead us through the workshop this evening?
Absolutely. Madam President, members of the board, thank you for coming this evening. I know that we spent time over the weekend, so we really appreciate you taking another night out of your busy schedule to convene with us. We certainly had an opportunity over the weekend to experience and have exposure to some exciting new ideas throughout the state. Of course, one of them being the event on Saturday that allowed us to look at cybersecurity and aeronautical engineering, and that's consistent with some of the things that we're going to talk about. The other thing that this board, for the record, expressed probably a month ago was, after having learned of the changes to the accountability system and the introduction of the ADF accountability system, became evident that the lives of administrators, principals, assistant principals, instructional specialists, and teachers would change significantly, and that Commissioner Morath, the Texas Education Agency in the state of Texas, was going to hold independent school districts responsible for every single child under this new model. and that the formula would require that there be 3 domains. The first domain was nothing new to us. We're familiar with. We've been very successful for decades relative to academic achievement, and that is making sure that students under the new system are either approaching the standard, preferably meeting the standard, or ideally mastering the standard, and that continues to be consistent with accountability systems prior to the current A to F accountability system. Where the new accountability system deviates is in emphasizing the growth of students, and that is holding teachers accountable, principals and schools accountable to make sure that every child at that school and in that classroom grows a year's worth during a year's worth of time. And that does change the game somewhat for principals, assistant principals, and teachers, and certainly it causes anxiety, and it requires that they know more about their students, develop a relationship with students, and make sure that over the course of the year there are formative assessments that indicate that the child is demonstrating growth, and in doing that, in many if not all cases, eliminating the achievement gap. And then finally there was Domain 3, and Domain 3 is ultimately an indicator that captures whether or not a student is college ready, career ready, and the new element, of course, is and/or military ready, and that's more a function of coding than anything else. Suffice to say that all of that in the aggregate has created some anxiety for our principals, assistant principals, and our teachers. They feel like they're being held to a higher standard. That's true. They're not sure whether or not that directive is coming from the board, the superintendent, or the school district, or whether it's coming from the state. We want to make sure that tonight we bring clarity to that issue and help people understand that neither this superintendent or this board has determined or decided that accountability standards would change and ultimately raise. That comes directly out of legislation, and we don't get the luxury or the latitude to decide whether or not we will be held to those standards. We are simply being told to play by those rules and those standards, and so as you likely understand and empathize, we don't have an option. We further discussed what we can do as a district. I think Mr. Ramirez was the one that brought up what can we do to try and relieve some of the burden that teachers have assumed over the years that isn't mission critical to the accountability system, and that could give them more time to really focus on their students. We've had several meetings. The first meeting was 2 weeks ago with the Isleta Teachers Association. Ms. Arlinda Valenzuela was there, or Valencia was there. We shared ideas back and forth. We've discussed what impact, if any, the random acts of kindness. Her punctuality is something we'll work on later. We talked about whether or not the Random Acts of Kindness program was considered somewhat burdensome, and she suggested some ideas. I think we've been open to those ideas, and we've ultimately restructured what the RAK program looks like in our district. But tonight we're here just really to talk about how can we honor and demonstrate value for classroom teachers, principals, and assistant principals who have had this new accountability system imposed upon them. And if there are any ideas or suggestions as to how we can lighten the load, I think tonight's a great forum and a great environment to have that conversation. At times, if the topic calls for it, I'd like to invite Arlinda, any member of the Isleta Teachers Association, to come up and give us their perspective on what's happening in our schools and in our classrooms so that we can brainstorm and find ways to be supportive of our teachers. That's what the item is really intended. It's intended to promote that level of conversation in a workshop environment where we can openly have just a conversation about it. The one thing I don't think we have the luxury to do is retreat from the goals and the targets and the standards that you as a board have set for this school district, for the administrators and teachers in the school district, and more importantly for the students and their parents in this school district, because it is really the impetus for having secured a very solid B grade that we really believe will likely be an A grade in a year and in no more than 2 years based on our strategic action plan. So at this time, I would just open it to comments about A2F accountability and how it's impacting teachers and the implications for teachers, and then allow some of staff around the table to be responsive to some of the concerns, some of the interests, and allow that to carry the conversation. Did I capture it?
Yes, I think so. I think I kind of want to start just because I think we all kind of realize that there's not a lot that we can do about the SLO, about the different things that they're having to do to meet the state requirements. I think that the main thing that we need to try to do is things that could possibly lighten their load in other ways. For example, I've been hearing, actually I attended a meeting of the SLEDA Teachers Association, and just some of the things that they were talking about range from lesson plans that are 4 or 5 pages long, along with other forms and documents that they have to fill out just to turn in for lesson plans and such. So I'm just kind of wondering if we can brainstorm about some of the things that we can do as a district in that area, because as far as the state accountability goes, there's really not too much we can do. I mean, the state has mandated it, and we have to do it. So I was just maybe thinking that we could brainstorm about some things like that. Or maybe, I don't know, this might be a good time for...
She's right here.
There you are.
And I know TSTA and Arlinda and Noel, they've had meetings. I'm sure that they've had an opportunity to talk to teachers from all across the state, and those teachers have been available to express sort of how they're feeling about the new accountability system. So maybe we give Arlinda an opportunity to just give us a sense for or of how, the teaching profession is reacting to the new A2F accountability system, and what is it about their day in and day out job that they believe, if addressed, could make it more manageable.
Good evening. I feel so important. I'm sitting with the big dogs right now. So I'm kind of...
No name calling, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. The start of the school has been difficult for a lot of the teachers. Of course, the beginning of school is always very difficult. Learning all the new names, learning every little personality that's in their classroom. Everyone comes with a different set of ideals as to what school's going to be about. So it's kind of difficult for a lot of teachers, but they enjoy it. They do enjoy it, and they are professionals. And they just want to be able to teach. That's it. They want to teach their subject. They want to teach the children what they know and what they need to know. But sometimes other programs get in the way. I do appreciate the district and the board for hearing us on the RAC. I heard that the RAC has now been pulled back. If I'm not mistaken, we've come to an agreement that where they would be doing it, the elementary teachers would be doing it twice a month instead of every week. That helps a lot. That's in elementary, and then in middle school, they agreed for once a month. And then high school, which is so hectic, they're going to quarterly. And I think that's going to help all the teachers be able to handle that program. And hopefully it'll be great. Other things that are, every school is different. This district allows principals to manage their school the best way that they feel is going to help them reach their goals. And that's where sometimes we do have a problem. It's not equitable throughout the district. every principal has different ideals, and they expect different things from each of their teachers. And I think that's where we come into a problem. Years ago, it was from the way it used to be done years ago was that everything came down from the district. And it was the district told you, this is what you're going to do. And they told every principal what they were going to do. So it was equitable. So if it was wrong in the district, it was wrong all across the district. And if it was good all across the district. Now, the way that for years now, it's been kind of like let the principals do what they want to do. And that's where we do come into some problems. And that's every principal has different things that they emphasize on. We have some schools that are very, very strict as far as their lesson plans. And I've got a school right now that has 4-page lesson plans. 4-page. That's just not doable. We have other schools that they can do lesson plans, but there's no, they can turn them in, and sometimes the principals will look at them, sometimes they won't. So that in itself is, it's not equitable. When you got a school over here wanting 4-page lesson plans, and then one that doesn't really look at the lesson plans. They trust their teachers to be professional enough to do what they're supposed to do in the classroom. So that's something that, and I do. I depend on the associates to help me out. Bobby Russell helps me out on issues that are really extreme. And I appreciate these ladies and gentlemen that help me with this. But there are programs that every principal is wanting in their schools, and it's time consuming, and it does take away from the teaching. So if that is something that needs to be discussed, that would really be helpful. If we could come to some kind of agreement as to what is really necessary in the classroom that will help all the teachers do what they need to do, teach their subject. And then if we can move forward to maybe adding some programs that aren't so cumbersome, then that would be great. But there are, like I said, that's basically what's going on right now. Thank you.
For Linda's point, she's absolutely right. Absolutely right. One of the things that is part of our instructional framework is this. One, when I arrived at the district, this district had a long history of being what was referred to as a site-based decision school district. It was very decentralized, and the idea was that you gave these principals, you gave them their budget, you set the goals, and the unintended consequence or the unintended message from the principal was, go away, come back at the end of the year. If I have failed to meet the goals, the targets, then you can hold me accountable. But I will get to decide whether or not I embrace technology. I will get to decide whether or not I buy a textbook from Houghton Mifflin or whether I buy one from McGraw-Hill. I will get to decide the scope and sequence of all the classes. Give me my budget, give me all of the responsibility, and at the end of the year, hold me accountable for the results. And there's probably a place for that. It just simply is not in the area of standards and curriculum and expectations, because what it does is, in many cases, it allows instructional leaders, principals, to suggest that you can only expect so much from the ISLETA student. By that I mean the ISLETA learning community student. They come to us, they're socioeconomically disadvantaged, the percentage of English learners is extremely high, poverty is hyper-poverty, their culture is different than what you might encounter in the Eastwood area or the Parkland area. So you holding us to the same standard as some of the other learning communities in the ISLETA Independent School District isn't fair. You need to allow us the luxury and the latitude to spend money on a curriculum, on instructional materials, on the type of teacher, on the technology that best fits this kind of student, as if they're a different DNA or as if they're a different Homo sapien, right? And so when we came in, we said there is, and it's important, that you recognize, acknowledge, and celebrate some of the things that make that attendance area, their historical traditions, their, what they value, the culture, all of those things. But the one thing that you cannot deviate on is the same gold standard for every child in this school district. And what site-based decision-making did, in my opinion, and I'm not trying to be critical or it's not an indictment of my predecessors, was give learning communities excuses for why their students, given their circumstances, given their conditions, should not be expected to learn in the same way and, more importantly, achieve or accomplish in the same way. So in our school district as of 2014, the curriculum in every content area is identical. Doesn't matter where you live. The standards are identical. The assessments are identical. What you get per student is identical. What we expect in terms of their conduct and behavior is identical. You get to play with how you run your homecoming parade, but you don't get to play with what you expect of those students and of those parents. It wasn't always welcome. It wasn't always embraced, but Ms. Valencia's right. There was that system, and there's still that system. We call it, there are some non-negotiables. Everybody plays by the same rules. The expectations are the same. I want the child in the Del Valle learning community to achieve and accomplish the same as if the child were in the Eastwood High School learning community. I'm not going to make excuses for them because there happen to be more children who live in poverty, who have a single parent, who have no father figure, or they have too many father figures. When it comes to preparing them for life as an adult, it's consistent. And so we introduce that, and everybody gets the same level of money. To Ms. Valencia's point, we do have Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 schools. And you get as much autonomy as you earn. By that, what I mean is, if your school's an A school and student outcomes are positive and students are performing well and the school is performing well, then you will get greater autonomy. I will not tell you that your teachers have to have a 4-page lesson plan. You've earned the right. You've demonstrated that whatever you're doing is effective. I'm not going to interfere with that school. If you're a Tier 2 school, I'm going to interfere a little bit more. If you're on the cusp or on the verge of becoming an improvement required school, yeah, by God, I am going to ask for teachers to submit lesson plans, whether they're 3-page lesson plans or 4-page lesson plans. And it's not just the teachers. I'm going to require the principals to submit plans, corrective action plans on how they're going to move their school from a Tier 3 school to a Tier 2 school and ultimately to a Tier 1 school. So under my model, you do get autonomy, but you have to earn the autonomy. And we do not treat all schools the same. Just like we don't treat all students the same, and we don't treat all teachers the same. You have very effective teachers. You have teachers who are average and are doing a good job and they're trying to get better. And then you have teachers who need a lot of support, and we provide them with professional development and training because they are Tier 3 teachers. Just like we have Tier 3 students, just like we have Tier 3 schools. You can't treat them all the same. And what that speaks to is the theory of there's such thing as equality, that's everybody being treated the same, and then there's such thing as equity. Some people need more than other people. And what we do is we differentiate that for schools, teachers, students, and administrators. And all of you know I've sent you BCs where I've made a recommendation that a principal be removed for lack of performance. That's a Tier 3 principal. That principal's hadn't the benefit of Brenda being at their school every day, or Becky, or Dr. Kennedy, or Robert, because they're not all the same. And I can't treat all of the schools the same because not all of the schools are performing the same. We have 6 schools, I believe, that are C schools. The majority of our schools are B schools, and then I have some schools that are A schools. Why would I treat an A school the same as one of those 6 schools when they've demonstrated that they're onto something and that those kids are being successful? Why wouldn't I give more support? Why wouldn't I pay more attention? Why wouldn't I have higher expectation of those 6 schools that ended up being 6 C schools instead of B and A schools? So just how we differentiate for teachers, we will differentiate for administrators, we will differentiate for schools, and you all have set some pretty aggressive and ambitious goals. And we plan to meet those goals. And Arlinda's right. Teaching has gotten very, very difficult. Very difficult. But not everybody is equal, including administrators, including principals, teachers, and students. And so you have to meet them wherever they are at. And so, yeah, that we do have some schools where the principal has decided, given the outcome, given the results of last year's assessments, I need to see your lesson plans. And your lesson plans need to be in greater detail than the teacher that works at the school that earned an A. Comments? Ideas? I mean, we're open to all of this.
Go ahead. Go ahead,
Okay.
Cruz.
I agree that we need to be consistent across the board. And I agree that we do have different levels, as you mentioned. But I also think that if you're, what did you call it,
Tier 3?
Tier 3, that we need to look at that a little further and not just say they need to come up to speed with the others. I think we need to help them. One is to streamline the programs that we have, where they only have certain programs that are consistent, at least for 3 to 5 years. I'm not going to say why, but I know what it does to you. You need to have some consistency with 1 or 2 programs that you know and become familiar with and feel comfortable with and work with that so you can perform your job as a teacher. The other thing is that we need to also keep the student-to-teacher ratio where the teacher can manage the students, especially in those tier 3s. If they're having, I think, less students for one teacher will be more effective than putting many students for one teacher. It's just asking for failure, in my eyes. I think if you keep the teacher where they can manage a smaller class, they can teach the lesson better, they can reach every student, and they can be more effective in their curriculum. And that's another thing, that we need to be uniform. I think you mentioned it. Our curriculum has to be uniform across the board. It's like if I send my son to Del Valle, and he transfers to Eastwood, or he goes to Bel Air, or whatever, he's going to not miss a step. I mean, they might be a little off on how the lesson is or the curriculum is going, but they're not going to be thrown into something brand new. If it's math in Eastwood, it's the same math level at that same period of time. You know, he's not that far behind or not that far ahead. So we also need uniform support. We need to support our teachers and our staff and everybody across the board if they ask for it. We cannot turn our backs on them and say, well, you know, we don't have the resources. Resources come in many packages, in many ways. I mean, it can be sending more teachers there, sending more admin there, or sending more money, or buying more supplies. And that's another thing I just remembered. We need to supply our teachers with what they need. We can't limit them on paper. We can't limit them on the resources, on printers. We cannot, we can manage that, but we can't set them, you only have so many that you can print out for that period of time. So I think we need to kind of just get together and come up with a good plan where we can help across the board, everybody. And if you're a tier 3, I think the class management and having smaller classrooms with more teachers there. And actually, I think if you have good role models in those schools, that that are good teachers, I think that will help the other teachers see, okay, this is how it's supposed to be for a good teacher. That's all I have to say.
Those are all excellent points, and I'll let someone else interject instead of and take up the entire time. In this school district, like I think most school districts, we are legally required to have no more than a 20-to-1 class size teacher-student ratio. So the elementary schools will always typically have 18, 20, at the most 22 students. In some unusual cases, we may apply for a waiver and have more students than that. The issue with middle school and high school, that ratio is at 23-to-1 district-wide. When I arrived here, one of the things that stuck out right away was that you had a school, and I'll just use this for illustrative purposes, like Eastwood High School, where they were enjoying a 12-to-1 ratio, and a school like Isleta High School that was operating at a 17, 18-to-1 ratio. And so there were no standard teacher-to-student ratios, and this staff, Bobby and her team, they've made sure that that's consistent across the district. I think where we struggle sometimes is that no good deed goes unpunished, right? So those teachers that are being effective in the classroom, we want to go ahead and keep their classes full, but we want to reduce the numbers for those Tier 3 teachers who are struggling, and we want to provide them aids, and we want to provide them additional staff development and training. And frankly, they're being paid the same as the teacher who's being very effective in the classroom. Notwithstanding, we think that it's a best practice. They're a lot like students. You have students that perform well, they need less support, they need less attention, they need less one-on-one. Those students that are in the middle of the road need a little bit more, and then of course those students who are our English learners, our special ed students, or just students who are struggling with literacy require the teacher, the aide, the interventionist, the instructional specialist, and everybody comes on board to help that Tier 3 environment. But we need to be careful because the morale of that teacher that shows up every day, does a great job, performs well, their students perform well, look around. Connie and I recently had a conversation about, when you do a good job, one of the first things they sometimes do is they decide that you don't need any additional support and you can handle all the kids yourself because the support needs to be redirected to a teacher or a department where things aren't going as well. And then you leave them with sort of this additional burden of having to do it all alone. So we want to be fair to all teachers, and we certainly want to treat teachers the way we treat students, where the ones that need additional support get additional training, additional resources. But reducing the number of students in their class would be a little bit of a delicate issue in that if you happen to be a good teacher, you get all 22 students or all 28 students or all 32 students. And if you struggle, we somehow find an artificial way to reduce your students to 15 or 16. And so we worry a little bit about that. In our school district, the teacher-student ratio has been, we've been operating at 20-to-1. So the elementary schools are not a problem. We staff them. Bobby and her team do an outstanding job at 23.5-to-1. Robert has started to look at our comprehensive high schools. Dr. Kennedy has looked at our middle schools to make sure that principals, one of the things that principals do sometimes that you have to keep an eye on these folks is they'll give, so if Arlinda's one of my buddies at Xavier High School, and I don't feel like I've been staffed accordingly at the administrative level, I may give Arlinda 3 relief periods where she should be teaching 7 out of 8, and make her a pseudo-administrator, and she happens to be a social studies teacher. Well, the minute I take her out and I say I need you to have these 3 prep periods or relief periods, her student load has just now been redistributed among the remaining social studies teachers. And both Robert and Rosemary Menchaca, one of their big responsibilities is to go in there and make sure that these middle school and high school principals aren't picking and choosing teachers who they get along well with and giving them release periods throughout the day that then results in their students having to be redistributed among the remaining department members so that they get students with 32, 38, 42. That's unmanageable at middle school and high school level. Bobby helps them with that. that type of thing. There were two things that came up, and Arlinda and the team talked about. One had to do with, obviously, RAC, and I think we reached a pretty good, at least for the time being, compromise. We'll look at it. We'll see how things go. We'll revisit the reduced frequency of RAC lessons. The other had to do with, across the country, there is this movement to move from desktop printers, right, and toner cartridges and paper being at an arm's length of a teacher so that they can print up worksheets and tests and things like that that are very convenient, and I understand that, to moving to reducing the carbon footprint and having these commercial-grade large copiers strategically located around a campus where a teacher could send the job, the copier holds the job until the teacher gets there, puts in their ID. Once they put their ID, they get the job, and then they take it with them, and it keeps track of, how many pieces of paper they're using. And they can do it from their phone, they can do it from their laptop, they can do it from Starbucks, they can do it from home, they can do it from a Chihuahuas game, right? That's the idea. And the only reason we've really taken an interest in that, not to say that I'm not environmentally sensitive, I am to some extent, has really more to do with something that you all have accomplished over the last 5 years. Arlinda's been part of it, and that is that our employees' health and welfare benefit premium has not changed in 5 years. And we've been kicking that can down the road, and the district, I think, on 2 occasions has increased its investment. But what we've really prided ourselves on when we go out to these conferences is the idea that if you were an employee in this school district back in 2013, your premium has not changed, and it will not change through 2019. In 14? And so Lindley's great about looking around corners and knows that it is likely imminent that Aetna's going to come back, that Gallagher, our healthcare advisor, is going to come back and say, you can't possibly expect to keep paying the same premium for that healthcare model another year. You've been getting away with it for 5 years. We've guaranteed our employees that their healthcare premium will not change through 2019. But something tells me that when 2020 comes, either we're going to have one of 3 options. One is the district has the money to offset the 10%, 12% increase in premium, which is something that we look forward to, but we have to find a way to generate that money. That's where this moving away from the desktop printers and paying $3.5 billion a year for toner jet or inkjets comes in. The second is, and it's not quite as popular, but it's also not quite as acrimonious, and that is when you send a letter to the employees and you say, hey, healthcare's gone up 12%, we're going to pick up 6%, and you're going to pick up 6%. That's called, a cost share model. It's better than giving it completely to them, but they still don't like the idea that they're going to have to pick up probably an additional $100, $200 a month. And then, of course, there's the fatal one, and that is when I get a letter from the healthcare provider that says your healthcare is going up 12%, and all I do is take my name off it, and I put the employee's name on it, and I forward it to their house, and they get a letter that says, I know you're paying $600 a month now, but healthcare has gone up 12%. Your healthcare is going to go up $70 a month, or $700, $800 a year. They don't appreciate that. And then you turn around and you compound the problem by saying your health care is going up $800 a month, and by the way, we can't give you much of a raise this year. But the cost of living went up. And then you start flirting with, the worst of all, you start flirting with the idea that you may or may not be able to afford the holiday bonus, which is a $2.5, $2.7 million investment every year. So if the health care goes up, the one thing you cannot do, and it's happened in YISD twice, is come out in July and say, we're going to give you this big raise, and then let them know in November that that raise you gave them in July, including the stipend or the bonus, will be completely wiped out by the increase in their health care plan that will all but wipe out the raise and then even dig into the salary they were making the year before, because eventually they'll realize, I'm going to actually make more money or less money this year than I did last year. I didn't get a raise. I got a cut in pay, right? So the only reason that Lindley and I and Mr. O'Neill and others have been talking about whether it's time to start retreating from those desktop printers where we pay for inkjets and paper and things like that is because $3.4 million is a significant amount of money that we may want to have available in the event that health care goes up 10%. In our case, and Lindley, tell me what we pay for health care now, close to $40 million a year? So $40 million, if they tell us that that premium is going up 10%, that means we have to come up with $4 million. If we want to keep the bonus, that means we have to come up with an additional $2.5 million for the bonus. Now we're at $6.5 million. And the other thing that this board has done for the last 5 years is they've given the employees a 2% increase almost every year. I think one year we may have gone 1.5 or something like that. But you're the first board that for 5 years has increased the salary schedule every year. 1.5%, 2% in this district is the equivalent of about $4 million. So the question becomes, where do I get $10 million next year to keep things going the way they've been going?
These are all excellent discussions. What I heard, though, and I would like to go back to try to understand more, what I heard is that how do we get to some academic consistency with our new A through F? And you mentioned the different tiers. So if we have some schools that are obviously tier 1, then we've been able to prove, or we've been able to get there and stay there. So they're doing something right. So how are we able to get to the, and what are some recommendations? Because I really want to learn for academic consistency. How do we get there?
Well, the first thing I would say is we need to be very careful in overstating that we're doing something right. Anyone who will tell you that demographics don't play a role in how schools perform isn't paying attention. So we do have some schools that are performing at the A level, but let me tell you, Valle Verde Early College High School is a very different school than Cedar Grove Elementary School.
But we're just talking about the tiers, because
That's what I'm talking about.
because we have schools at tier 1 that
Yeah.
I'm sure are in a very economically distressed.
Some.
So we're, it's,
Give me an example of an A school in a socioeconomically disadvantaged area. Ramona. So Ramona is one of the schools. Now, Ramona, I think, is outstanding leadership, good principal, good core group of teachers, just a little over 200 kids. Right? Valle Verde is an early college high school. The Young Women's Leadership Academy is a specialized school. These are all A schools.
but just because we're at right now we're going into the A through F, but these schools where we have some Bs, those aren't necessarily tier 2 schools, are they? Because then we'd have a lot of tier 2 schools.
You always have more tier 2. And student-wise too, you always have a few tier 1, and then you have a lot of tier 2, and then you have a few tier 3.
So then it speaks back to what Cruz said, to the classes are smaller, the class sizes.
I don't understand that.
Because if you're saying at Eastwood, you said it's 200 students
No,
total?
at Ramona?
At Ramona.
But the class size is still the same. The aggregate number of kids at Ramona is 200 plus, but that just means there are less sections of students at Ramona than suggesting that Ramona has less students per class. Across the district, it's the standard. All elementary schools are staffed at 20 to 1.
So then how do we,
There's no deviation.
Just going to what Arlinda was saying, going back to the lesson plans. I understand completely on how you treat some schools that are performing higher, give them more autonomy. The only question I have is, would it really be not beneficial to a district to create a centralized
a standard?
template for the lesson plans? Only because there are restrictions in the Texas Education Code as to how much can be asked for in a lesson plan. And the last thing I want is, because we give so much autonomy to some of our schools, that they end up asking for things that maybe they shouldn't be asking for. But if we create a centralized one and ask for everything that you really need to be able to know that the teacher's performing correctly, we ensure that every one of our schools is asking for what's required and not asking too much where we can get grievances or things like that, just to avoid those kind of issues.
And I think the grievance is a great opportunity to address some of that. I think the thing that we have to recognize is that when they ask for what someone may see as an excessive lesson plan, it's because in a lot of these schools you have a significant percentage of students with autism, with special needs, with that are English learners, and our curriculum, the TRS curriculum, has a lesson plan alternative for every one of those sub-pops. And then when you get into a school like a Scottsdale or Tierra del Sol, Glen Cove, they have lower number of those students, so the teachers don't have to really extrapolate the lesson plan on beyond the general ed students. We can certainly work with principals to say, look, let's try to keep our lesson plans to no more than a page or two. I think our Linda mentioned that there's some legislation out there that really prevents or encourages reducing paper, I think, significantly.
It's the paper reduction law.
But what's really driving it is the idea that all of these teachers are supposed to know their students and they're supposed to look at the student as an individual. And sometimes to address Johnny or Sammy's needs, there may be some principals asking, what are you going to do with Johnny? I mean, Johnny's, this, and this, and he or she deserve the same level of rigor. How are you going to get there? The lesson plans, I think, is something that we can regulate. I just don't know that you can create a template that would run across the district, to your point. If it's excessive, and if Arlinda does. She does a great job of contacting Brenda and Becky and saying at ABC school, principal so-and-so is requiring this often, and both of the ladies go out and they look at it and determine whether or not it's excessive, and they try and tone it down.
If I can interject.
Yes, please.
There's basically two laws that the board needs to understand. That's the paper reduction law. You can't ask teachers to just do things over and over and over again. Then you have the lesson plan law, and that is section 11.164. It's restricting written information. And number 6, it says, a unit or weekly lesson plan that outlines in a brief and general manner. That is very brief and general. That is not what some principals ask for. When you're talking about a 4-page lesson plan, the teacher is working hours to do that instead of just thinking of what they're going to teach in the classroom. So I'm going to tell you, this district could put me out of business if you did 3 things. Yeah, put me out of business. If you want to put me out of business.
You have my attention.
All right. Then do not touch conference periods. Do not. That is a law. They have 45 minutes a day or 90 minutes every other day. And we have principals not doing that. I will never be out of business because I have principals having PLC on conferences. They have all kinds of stuff going on during conferences. I have a teacher right now that hasn't had a conference all year. I haven't had a chance to talk to Bobby about it, but that's coming. But she helps me out when this happens. Don't think that she doesn't. Number 2, the lesson plans. If we can bring those lesson plans down to brief and concise, you wouldn't have a problem with me. 3rd, give our teachers an 8-hour workday. 8 hours. Right now, we have teachers working 8.5 hours every single day because they're staying, especially elementary. We don't have that problem in high school. But in elementary, those teachers are being made to stay till 4 o'clock every day. And they're at work at 7:30 every morning. Well, no, they're there at 7:15, 7 o'clock. And then they go home at 4. So those are the things that if we could just get principals to understand those 3 laws, you'd put me out of business. So I'm hoping that if we can get together and have them do it. But Becky has told principals over and over and over again. Brenda has told principals over and over again. They don't get it. They still, those 3 laws are constantly being broken. And like I said, a lot of teachers, this is happening to them, but they won't report it because they're scared. And that happens.
Has there ever been a thought, and I mean, I don't know if we've ever thought of this, of doing a consistent bell schedule for elementary, middle school, and high school where everybody starts at the same time that's elementary, everybody starts at the same time that's
Yes, that would
middle
be
school?
wonderful.
Do we have we ever had that or something?
Yeah,
We do, but they don't keep it.
We're very close to that. There's a little bit of deviation because of the construction at some of the schools. I will tell you this, and I think Cruz will agree with this, and you probably will agree with this. Teachers are not hourly employees. They are salaried employees. Cruz, when's the last time you only worked 8 hours? You've never seen an 8-hour day in your life, have you? I've never seen an 8-hour day in my life. Can you imagine if in this industry, now she's absolutely right. And what she's saying, by the way, is not uncommon, and she's doing exactly what union and association presidents and the company tagline is, and that is, you cannot take their prep period. It's supposed to be duty-free. It's their time. They can do whatever they want with it. And principals infringe on that a lot, and we need to get on top of them and let them know that that's their time. They're not to be interrupted. Lesson plans should be required in some cases, but they should be reasonable. The one where we have always struggled is when you're a per diem employee, when you're a teacher, administrator, principal, director, associate superintendent, there is no such thing as an 8-hour workday. You can't do the things that we've done in this school district in 8 hours, and it's just true. And because you get paid, because how many teachers clock in and clock out? How many classified employees clock in and clock out? All of them. You have to make a distinction between someone who is getting paid for their time, a custodian, a groundskeeper, a maintenance and operations person, and someone who's being paid to get the job done. And the work we do cannot happen in 8 hours. But you know what? I'd be the first one to say, 8 hours? I'm on board. I'll show up. I'll be at 8. Don't call me after 5, Catherine. Do not call me after 5. You'd have to give them overtime. So I'm on board with Arlinda on that. And by the way, even the hour thing is subject because in the United States, a workday is recognized as an 8-hour day. But that's just not the reality in education.
And I'm sorry, but I didn't mean to think that or make you think that that's all they do is 8 hours.
I know, 'cause you-
They don't. I'm saying mandatory. Mandatory.
Let me answer your copy over there where I couldn't answer.
Yes, sir.
That's all I'm doing is
I thought you were going to the bathroom. You're back.
No, I'm working 8 hours. I understand that. I'm there at the way in the beginning before class start, and I'm there during lunch, and I'm doing there all day long. So there's no need for me to be clocked. But I stay because I choose to stay.
That's right.
Not because I'm forced to stay.
That's true.
And that is my choice, okay? And I don't think a lot of teachers have that choice. And because I know my workload, it's pretty big.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
I'm committed. If I didn't care about that, I'd just take off.
Absolutely.
So
No, and there's not a teacher that works just 8 hours.
Yeah, nobody went into
Nobody.
teaching thinking they were going to make a ton
no.
of money,
oh no,
right? They went into teaching because they care about
well that's
kids.
another subject.
I think Mr. Rosales wanted to say something.
You know, from a guy that's least qualified to make any statements, for a guy that is least qualified to make any statements, I look at the overall picture. Here's the state saying, these are the A to Z implementations, and you must do this, this, and this, and that. And in the last 3.5 years, as I've come to these meetings, I've come to realize what a magnificent group of administrators we have. So the issue is this, from a guy who doesn't know what he's talking about in terms of the mechanics of what you all do, it seems to me that administration, as well as we perform, is going to have to make an adaptation to work in areas such as lesson plans. Because if you give if you give certain individuals certain latitude, it's going to create problems. So I'm not saying you cannot do that. You've got to have some form of a ban of what can and cannot be done. And one thing that I've heard in the last 3.5 years is from teachers or husbands of teachers, where they have to spend $600 or $700 of their own pocket money to provide for the children. That is not correct. If we're able to realign this district and able to put a certain amount into the reserve fund, we should not force the teachers to pay any money out of their pocket unless we're needing it. Another thing too, let me put my glasses on. As far as the, and I'm oversimplifying this thing, the teaching profession is certainly not a profession that, like you said, you do it because it's an act of love. Well, having said that done, it's going to require with these new initiatives of the state, it's going to require a tremendous amount of leadership from administration. You guys know what needs to be done. The problem is, are you going to be able to have the gumption to implement, and you yourselves cannot afford to have your favorites. I have my favorite principal. He did real well. You got to get away from that because ultimately we're being looked at from the state. I'm preaching to you, but I don't mean to do that. I'm just being brutally honest. The other points that I wanted to, the prep periods, the loading and overloading, again, it goes back to you administrators need to look at it. You know exactly what needs and what needs to be done. And with the input of this lady here, I feel that we can come up with a great idea, or at least something that you can come to the board and teach guys like me that an approach that makes a lot of sense. Okay. I mean, I don't mean to downplay or talk down to you. It's just I just see the overall picture, and I don't like it any more because ultimately, when you look at this big picture, it's all done by politicians that are influencing the leadership of education. So when you consider that, it's so frustrating for me to understand, and I won't go into names, of certain individuals throughout the state that have the input and the power to implement these things and create a lot of havoc on well-run districts like this. I'm not saying we're perfect, but I think this district is extremely well managed. We have all the people in place. So again, in closing, I'd say, you all get together, have a big powwow, and get it fixed.
And this is the last thing I'm going to say. I've already talked too much. What Mike said is true. We really we're not that far apart. I mean, it feels like a lot for us because we all do everything very well. She does a great job of representing the association. Teachers work their tail off. They give more than 8 hours a day. Administrators are very responsive. All of the associate superintendents have known since the day I arrived that we can't do it without the teachers. They're the people in the four corners of the classroom. Our human resources department is beyond reproach. Pat O'Neill is doing an outstanding. We are in a very, very, very good, high-performing school district. What we're talking about here tonight are just little tweaks, right? We met 3 weeks. I don't want to give the impression that, we're at an impasse or something like that. We go back and forth. Arlinda's given us some of the best ideas in this. Arlinda's the holiday bonus. By the way, she's the one responsible for the $2.5 million commitment every year. So when we can't afford it, right there. When we can't afford it, that money that used to go to the YEF for jeans, we're keeping it. They don't know that yet. So we're trying, all we're doing is something that nobody else is doing, and that is that we're recognizing that this new A2F accountability system has resulted in a greater burden to principals, assistant principals, teachers, staff, and everybody, and that they're feeling it, and that she's seeing it in the face of her members. They're seeing it in the face of their principals. I see it in their faces some days. And there's one thing that's true. Even if all we did was what we did last year, we are a solid B, where 6 schools are C's, and the rest of our all of our schools are A and Bs, and we didn't even try, right? So we just want to ramp it up just a little bit, right, and help our teachers. But she's right. A prep period is a prep period. It's a duty-free period. They can do whatever they want. They can go get their nails done if they want. Not that they would ever do that. Only when it's backed up to lunch or the end of the school day. And I don't blame
I got
them.
a couple questions real quick.
Huh?
I didn't know you
Yes,
had
sir.
Jordan.
2, she's right about lesson plans. They should be reasonable. And then 3, I think we all agree that this is not, for any of us, an 8-hour job. And that nobody got into this work to get wealthy, because if you wanted to be wealthy, you got into the wrong work. And it's just gotten harder and harder. But
And I forgot to mention
Yes.
the 30-minute duty-free lunch. That's the law.
we will stop.
Yeah.
Bobby will get on it. You
Oh, she
cannot
is.
do that to
And
them.
she is. And I just want to tell you that I appreciate the fact that you're even listening. That is something that has never happened. I mean, this is so new. I'm shocked.
And tell
When-
them, it's
when
not just
you-
new here, right?
It's new here.
I know, but it's not just new here.
No, no.
Across the state of Texas,
Oh, yeah.
there is a real cavalier attitude
Yeah.
toward associations and being inclusive.
Yeah, and I got to tell you that I appreciate everybody here around this table. You're doing a fantastic job. And all I can say is that, yeah, we have some things that we have to clear up, and I don't ever expect it to get done just immediately. But along the time, it does work. They do help everyone. So I do want to touch on one other thing, though.
Oh, wait a minute. You only said one.
I just want to touch one more thing, and that the budget. And I have even told Dr. De La Torre that I really feel that the budget is what sometimes it cripples the schools, because some principals can't manage the money like other principals can. And just let me give you an idea. I have schools right now that got zero money for supplies. I got some other schools that got $15 for supplies. I have a school that got $150 each for their supplies. Do you see the difference there? And I'm going to tell you, he doesn't. The principals have control of that.
Yeah, she's not saying that the school didn't get the money. It's that when the principal got it, how he
How
decided.
they spend it is how the printers. We've got teachers that have their own printers. They've been threatened it's going to be taken away. One school already took all their printers. Teachers want their printers, and they're willing to pay for their own paper, their own cartridges. Leave them alone. If they want to pay for it, let them have their printer. But you've got principals out there that said, no, we're taking them all. And if you have one, then take it home, but you're not going to have it in your class. So things like that, you really, when they really stick their head in the sand and aren't going to listen, that's when we have a problem. But I can turn to Bobby, and I can tell her, look, we got to do something about this. But sometimes, like this school that already did it, how are we going to fix that? Teachers are without their printers, and the only reason they want a printer is if little Johnny comes into class, he forgot his homework, and they're going to be working on the worksheet, they can print one right quick.
Right.
They don't have to leave their classroom and go down to the printer and get it. They have it right there. So there are reasons why teachers might want to have a printer in their classroom, and if they're willing to pay for it, let them. But once again, if a principal manages their money properly, they could even give them paper for their printer. But that's not your fault.
No.
It's the way the system works right now.
The only thing
I-
that I would say is that I don't want it to be what Cruz has brought up, and that is that the teacher says, I'll provide my own paper, but then you look at their school supply list, and you find out that 30 kids have been asked to bring a ream of paper.
Yeah.
And so it ultimately ends up being, you're not providing the paper, you're asking parents. So one of the things that Cruz and I have talked about that we'll bring to you later because it's not in the agenda is whether or not it makes sense to be truly the only free public school system in El Paso where we eliminate and abolish all school supply lists, but but we take whatever the teachers were asking for and we buy it in bulk. It's delivered over the summer. It's delivered out to the schools. It's in their classroom on pallets when they arrive in August, but they cannot send anything out to any of the children. The reason that's attractive is because if I'm the parent of 3 or 4 little ones and I'm barely making ends meet, but I'm going to school at, think of an elementary school on the Alameda next to Riverside, and I know that they're going to give me 4 school supply lists, but I find out that at Escata Elementary School down the road, they've abolished school supply list. I don't have to pay $40 for 4 kids or $160. That's groceries, that's the electric bill, that's the water bill. I may just get in my car every day and take my 4 little youngsters to Escárate. Enrollment will go up. Now, and Arlinda will tell you this, there are some teachers that are very specific about what they want on their school supply list, to the point where they actually list the brand. And every time we've gone out there to try to say, let us buy it and let us buy it in bulk, they start asking whether or not the toilet paper is going to be 2-ply or 3-ply because they require 4-ply. And you say to them, we're going to try and get the best economical deal. And they'll say, no, I got to have my list because I got to have 4-ply. Or I have to have Purcell or the hand stuff, or I need to have 3 reams of paper. And you say to them, don't ask kids for paper. You're talking about kids who live on annual incomes of $12,000, $13,000 a year. But Lindley and I have talked about, give us by grade level every school supply list. Let us work directly with the providers. Let them deliver like tons and tons of this stuff. Let our maintenance and operation people take it out to the schools. Let's put it in their classroom and put up billboards all over the city saying the only true, free public school system in the entire city. And you will get kids from the west and the east to come to our elementary schools knowing you don't have to pay a dime for school supplies. You may have to pay for uniforms, you may have to buy a little backpack, but you don't have to pay $40, $50, $60 per student. But what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to get together with her and her reps, who are going to have to go back and talk to the teachers and say, this is what the district wants to do. Because it's not the big things that get you sideways with the teachers. It's printers and toner cartridge and school supplies. It's the little things that they've always had control of. And she needs their support and we need their support, or else we'll have an uprising.
Mutiny.
So that's what we're going to try and work on this year, to see whether or not can we really become the only free public school system in El Paso. And I promise you we'll get families and kids.
Just love how you're passionate about that. You took off your jacket, you lifted up your sleeves, you're
We're
ready
here to
go.
work. We're here to work. Are the A's winning?
Right. Well, I just have a quick question about, and I got this tweak that we're implying that we're being proactive on this. You know, our teachers, the one that teach to the test, is it equity with all our teachers?
I think
Or do
teachers
they have more?
I think teachers have been put in a position to juxtapose philosophically where they live, like well-rounded kids, and then understanding that under the new accountability system, I get to single Charlie out and put up how you did on assessments, and that the general public is going to assess you on assessments. So it's not like they have a choice.
So like our English teachers or math teachers, they do have a little more rigor, right?
Oh, yeah.
So how can we help them now, right now? How can our associates, you guys were at their position at one time, you know, how can we help them just to alleviate just a little bit of the work that's going on right now, just to help them get acclimated to the work that's coming on right now?
Yeah.
How, I mean, you guys, you've been there. How can we help them right now?
It's hard. I mean, they're the person in the 4 corners of the classroom. One of the things that we're trying to encourage our principals is to send the message to the entire faculty at the school. Yeah, she's my English teacher. She's my English 1 teacher at Bel Air High School. But it cannot just be her responsibility to promote English. So if you're the teacher that happens to be in the elective class that isn't going to be tested, have assignments and activities and worksheets and an experience that indirectly helps her too. Because what happens in our current system is you're the football coach. you teach, let's say, 4 periods of physical education. You're never going to have your kids assessed. You're never going to be judged on how your kids do in PE. You get to, for lack of a better word, skip around campus, have coffee, talk to everybody. You're the English
Go home
1
at 4
teacher.
o'clock.
You spend the whole year knowing that at the end of the year, there's going to be some data. It's going to be in the El Paso Times, and it's going to be a direct reflection of how effective you are as a teacher. So what we don't want is this resentment that every time she sees an art teacher, a PE teacher, the football coach, woodworking teacher, macrame teacher, that they're going. Because think about it, at the high school, there are 5 teachers in 5 grade levels that define whether a high school is effective or not. They're your English 1 teachers, English 2 teachers, U.S. history teachers, biology teachers, and algebra teachers. Algebra, we dominate. Biology, we do well. U.S., we do. Where don't we do well? English. And we still do better than neighboring districts. But it builds this thing up where if I'm in a faculty meeting and I'm looking around the room and she teaches home economics. That little one right there is the gymnastics girl. That big fellow over there is the athletic director. It can create some resentment. So what the principals need to do is say, look, we are all responsible for helping Connie, for helping Brenda. Do activities in your class, Cruz. I know it's a STEM class. I know it's robotics. But do activities in your class that support algebra, that support English language arts, that support history, because you can't give it all to these 5 teachers. Same thing happens at the middle school, although to a lesser degree. And then in the elementary school, everybody sort of shares in it because it's the 4 or 5 content areas with writing at the 4th grade level. But that's a real problem because, what's Angie teach?
Math.
Math. She's on the hook.
Yeah.
But if she looks across the hall and someone's over there and they happen to have an elective class and it's drafting, that teacher will never be held under the microscope to see whether or not they're effective or not. She carries it. But that drafting teacher across the hall should be coming over to Angie and saying, what are you teaching? How can I help? How can I introduce it into drafting or geometry or whatever it is? I want to help you. How can I tutor for you? How can I be your partner? And that's what we're trying to get principals to do, is to understand, if you just put it on those 5 teachers, then I want to do graphic design. I want to be your computer programming teacher. Because at the end of the day, I'll never be held accountable. And it'll be like this, damn, sorry, Charlie.
Or even just to grade papers or, do something paperwork,
right?
Can I say real quick, I know that some of the principals are doing that. I know that
They should be.
that over at Bel Air, they have different writing assignments, different reading assignments that they're doing curriculum-wide in physics and different classes that are geared to help English, to help biology, to help the different things that they're doing. So they're doing it to a certain extent. Can we do better? I'm pretty sure we can. But I think that we are trying it, and I think we are doing it
Middle
in
schools,
some
Kathy,
schools.
what's going on in the middle schools? If I hear myself one more time, I'm going to run out of this room.
Pretty excited.
That's my cookie.
Thank you. You said what everybody else was thinking.
We're pretty excited at the middle school this year. We have created what we call our CAB meeting. So right now it's been every month we have a representative from every campus, every content, and they are planning. They're planning their units, they're planning their assessments. So at the end of the day, they walk away with a complete 9-week plan. And so that's been really helpful. As I'm meeting with principals, as we're doing the beginning of the year TPES, the whole mindset of how we are looking at kids has changed completely. It's no longer pushing from the bottom, but pulling from the top, but everybody's responsible. I had a conference today with a principal who said our fine arts, our elective teachers are helping with read alouds. They're making sure that students are given time to do iStation and Imagine Math during their class, so it's not specifically for or on that content teacher. So there's a lot of planning, a lot of sharing going on with our middle schools, and we're excited because we've gotten some really good feedback from teachers who said, I am working with teachers from all over the district and we're sharing our ideas, and it's helping me grow as a teacher. So we're not only looking at student growth, but definitely teacher growth as well.
Just a quick question, Arlinda. On the accountability system, counselors, principals have been trained over and over through the A through F. How comfortable do you feel that teachers truly understand the A through F system? I know that the district has provided training on it, obviously, but how comfortable do they really realize what the new standards are, like the 30 by 60, all these different things that are going on that is being required by the state so that they can see why they're being pushed so hard?
Honestly, I was invited to a meeting at the district, and I was given the A through F presentation, and I had a very hard time understanding it. And it was specifically for me to understand it. And I can understand teachers out there, they probably were just like me. I'm sitting there, I'm watching, and I think only one person in that, what was his name? Raul. He's the only one that understood it. And everybody else was just in awe of the system. I cannot believe that someone sat in a room and figured that out. It is just so beyond understanding. And I don't think our teachers understand it. They just know, hey, we have to strive for an A. How to get there, it's going to be difficult.
And I think that that's something, I come across that also, and I mean, there's teachers that have never even heard of 30 by 60, and so things like that is when we're trying to push our teachers to do so much work. I know the district is doing their best to explain a very complicated and convoluted system. We really need to do something to maybe simplify it to a degree where something like 90-60-30, like 90% meets, not meets, approaches 60% meets, 30% masters will get you to an A. Something very simple that teachers can pick up on where they understand and just hang posters like that all over the schools where they can possibly understand why they're being pushed so much. Because it's one thing to ask them, work harder, because there's these new accountability systems. But if you don't understand what the new system is, then maybe you don't know how to work not just harder, but smarter. And I think that's something we can improve on to help teachers.
It's kind of a catch-22. You feel bad for teachers, expecting them to understand that level of complexity. This was developed by Mike Morath, the commissioner, who is a computer scientist and a multimillionaire who's come up with this statistical thing. And we've gone back and forth. Do we really, really go in and try to get them to wrap their head around domain 1, domain 2, domain 3, and then risk having them walk out and feel like defeated, like, I can't do this? Or do you say, do what you've been doing? We're going to provide you with some additional support. The only thing, because here's the truth about the new accountability system. If you take care of one thing, it takes care of everything. And guess what that is? Growth. Yeah. Forget passing, not passing the test. If you can get that child to grow a year in English language arts, math, if you just focus on growth, 1 year's worth of growth will take care of meeting or exceeding or mastering. It'll take care of eliminating the achievement gap. It'll take care of college career readiness. The other part will be coding. But it really has come down to Mike Morath saying, if you have a kid in your class for a year, I expect them to grow that year. And I expect them to grow a year. Just reduce it to that. And then tell teachers, by the way, based on your performance last year, most of your kids grew a year. Most of them grew a year and then some. Do what you've been doing and just tweak it a little bit. What I don't want is paralysis. I don't want them to panic and start trying to do things that are so different and so foreign that all of the progress they made the years before goes backwards. So I'm almost to the point where, you know what, tell the principals just to tweak it just a little bit. Don't put too much pressure on them. If you do what you did last year, guess what? We're going to end up with a B grade. 90% of our schools are A's and B's, and we're going to have a handful of C's. Is that okay? That's okay, because we're phenomenal with the visual and performing arts. Our athletic programs are amazing. The culture and the climate in the district's great. It's a great school district. Quit trying to convince us we're not a good school district. I mean, I was down at Tassatasby. Everybody has IR schools. Everybody has DNF schools, especially schools that look like ours. Laredo, Brownsville, McAllen's very good. Corpus Christi. We're doing phenomenal work here with our student population. Let's not give the impression that, oh my God, the world is, the earth is crumbling. Do what you've always done. Do what you've always done.
Connie, I just want to do a piggyback on what Linda says. I cannot imagine being a responsible citizen and being elected to a position such as a board of trustee and have this mental confrontational approach that ultimately impacts the children. I just, it's beyond me. And so when you say, gosh, I can't believe that I feel that we're being very responsive to the fact that our goals are what we're striving, and our record speaks for itself in this district. And yeah, we can tweak it, and we're going to get better. I understand that, but to me, it's something that I think if an individual is elected to a position like this and is here for a special agenda or to be a monkey wrench in this, especially in the way we've got it now, it's a big detriment to our community, and God only knows how many detrimental things have happened to this community in the last 30 years through the lack of secondary, I call it secondary leadership. There have been good leaders and a whole bunch of lousy ones. And I just want to be, when I leave here, I just want to make sure that I'm on the positive end of the leadership thing. It's a joy working with
I think what the board wanted, what the point of tonight was, the board wanted teachers to know
Yeah.
that they're
That we
not
care.
cavalier about the increased anxiety and stress. They genuinely care about their work environment, and they want to know, how can we help you? That was, I think, the objective of this item.
That's absolutely the objective, because we don't want our teachers, we know that without them doing what they do, we don't do what we need to do. And so that's absolutely it. And we just want the news spread that we are listening and we do care and that we want to help with their load.
Can
So-
they come to a rep meeting maybe and field questions and talk about this? Yeah, that's right. I just got you guys committed to a meeting. You're welcome. You guys are welcome. I did that.
I go quite often, and
Yes,
it would be I think a nice thing for us to go, because it does show the teachers that we do care about what's going on with them, and it's kind of an eye-opening experience too, because you hear where the tire hits the road right there. I mean, they're telling you what's going on, and it's not even that they even want you to sit and explain things. They just want you to hear it. And so it's not a bad idea. It really
I
isn't.
think that'd be a good step.
Yeah,
Everybody needs a sounding board.
absolutely.
Well, all I can say is this is wonderful. If when teachers see this and know that you were asking these questions, wanting to know how things can be better in the schools, I mean, they can't say that it was a bad idea. There's just no way. This is the first time we've ever been asked to the table and asked questions about how our teachers doing in the classroom. And I thank this board. I thank the administrators that are at this table. I really appreciate it, and hope that we continue the conversation.
If that's going to be all for now, if that's okay, it seems like a good ending place to me, but if I'm cutting anybody off, let me know. And I think right now would be a good time to do a recess before we hit our next topic. So maybe about 10 minutes.
With the motive, he called an executive
7:38, and continue on.
in the area of trades and industry. The idea of transforming a very old vocational school into a state-of-the-art career center for all of YISD students. This afternoon, or this evening now, our objective is to share with you a summary of what has transpired over the last 12 months, in which we've analyzed and redesigned all our existing programs to ensure that our students are getting a top-notch education with the resources that are available. Our proposal calls for the modernizing the Career Center in two major areas. The first is the facilities. Our current facility was built in 1972, 46 years ago. Some of you are younger than that. Not me, but some of you. Obviously, there were some upgrades over the years, and depending on the level of commitment from campus and district administrators, that it changed the facade. It changed the color, but really did very little for the educational program at each program. Our proposal this evening details a complete overhaul of all instructional areas, all teaching classrooms, all training areas, including industry-type simulators that will now place us in compliance with EPCC requirements and will also put us on par with industry standards. The second area is in the equipment upgrade, which includes simulators. We will now be able to offer our students the ability to learn and use equipment that they will see in the most state-of-the-art industry or careers they choose to go into. Our approach has been to modernize the Career Center in three areas. This is phase one. This presentation is phase one, which was the analysis of the existing programs, making sure that we're aligned with EPCC, we're able to offer our students dual credit, make sure that we're aligned with industry partners, which will serve as mentors, provide our students with internships and our teachers with externships. And we'll make sure that at the bottom line that we've used market analysis to ensure that our programs are viable and these industries are viable for 5 to 10 years out, well after our students graduate from high school. Phase two, which is not part of this presentation, calls for the expansion of these it's been a long night. It's more than 8 hours. Phase two calls for the expansion of these programs, in which, in most cases, with the additional FTEs as need arises, we're able to double. So the initial renderings have that capability embedded in them. And then phase three, which includes the additional programs, at which point we would analyze student interest, make sure that we're analyzing our market analysis to make sure that that program or those programs are viable, make sure that we have a higher ed partner in that can offer dual credit, and then we have our industry partnerships that can provide the internships and externships for our program. So really our goal this evening is twofold. One is to ensure that our students are getting a great quality education. And two, more importantly, is that we're on the cutting edge of being the very finest of premier trades and industry program throughout our region and throughout our state. Okay?
So how do we derive to this? What was our process? You know, there's a method to this. We wanted to ensure that we were very thoughtful and deliberate and really looking at the details. We ran through a process starting with the analysis of programs, and we did it in three parts. First of all, what does the job outlook look like in this industry? And when we started analyzing our programs, is there a viable option moving forward? Because the last thing we want to do is invest thousands of dollars into a program that may not be there for students as a possible career opportunity 5, 10 years out, number one, within the region. Secondly, we were looking at the partnership and tying it with higher ed, in particular with our higher ed here in the region. And so we were looking at the idea of adding dual credit and certifications tied to college here in El Paso. And the third piece, and most importantly, more than likely, is just studying the industry standards. What does the industry standards call for now? Because we need to make sure that we're up to date and to par and offering those facilities to our students that mirror exactly what the industry is and what the certifications are, and along with the equipment. The results of the analysis, as Mr. Gurani pointed out, is that there is a need for upgrading our facilities and equipment, and more importantly, curriculum and certifications. We also determined that we have a great opportunity with EPCC to really align ourselves, because as you know, EPCC right now is in the process of also developing their CTE programs, and they're actually building as we speak. So our goal and our vision was our programs need to tightly align with CTE programs with EPCC, therefore offering dual credit in these programs, and then getting certifications, and then our students having the opportunity after high school to continue on. And lastly, we also saw in doing our market analysis that we can corner 3 particular new programs. And we found that cybersecurity is a hotbed, and that is a need that we could easily incorporate into our existing programs. I know that last year we opened up the new program of solar panel, which, by the way, is the first in the country to be offered in that particular pathway. And lastly was the HVAC. So we were able to pinpoint at least those 3 new programs that we could easily incorporate within what we already offer. Now, the next piece that took a long process was that you need to understand is this was a very inclusive, collaborative process. This was in discussions with EPCC officials, instructors, business industry, and our Riverside teachers and administration, and really looking at what is the outlook and aligning everything succinctly. So what we're offering, what we're building, and what our vision is strictly aligned to what the college EPCC standards look like, and also our industry. Along with that, we were able to create a facility and equipment specification because we wanted to ensure that we offered the best quality equipment, certifications that are tightly aligned with the current industries. And lastly was the architectural design. That was a very robust process because in the programming phase, our architects came in, met with our stakeholders, and they literally met over a course of time in really looking at the learning spaces and how we can redesign, collaborate, and create that vision to tightly align with industry. We also added the schematic design and lastly the design development where we are to this point. And so what we want to just kind of give the board and the cabinet is just an overall robust process that we entailed in how we analyzed each of our programs.
Oh, sorry about that. Thought it was a Swift. Okay. So the first thing that we did, the very first thing that we did was we partnered with Borderplex Solutions because we wanted to make sure that the programs that we currently have and the programs that we were thinking about bringing in were needed in El Paso. That there was a need for them, that there was growth, and we weren't going to be creating something that we were interested in or students were interested in, but there wasn't a return at the end. The programs on the left, those are the programs that we currently have. The occupational title, that's just one example of, for instance, architecture, one example of a job title and an average El Paso yearly income. Growth on the far right. So I wanted to recognize that I understand that you drive 4 hours east from here, that welders can make about double, sometimes triple that amount. And cosmetology, I know my cosmetology teacher would appreciate this, that is their income before tips. Nobody knows how much these cosmetologists make, but it's somewhere between double and triple. Okay, next slide. Okay, I mentioned we have 11 programs of study. Now, some of these programs are quite complex. Architecture. There are 3 different pathways within the architecture program. We have architecture, yes. We also have civil engineering, and we have a very complex, I just blanked out, I'm sorry. So, surveying, TxDOT. Between TxDOT and the El Paso civil engineering firms, they're beating down Mr. Torres' door and asking for the seniors to come and work for them, in internship capacity, of course. Okay, lost my train of thought. I'm very sorry. The new dual credit opportunities. This one's new to us. We're going to be starting 4 dual credit classes within the programs that we have. And I believe it was Mr. Gudani that he mentioned, in order for us to have more dual credit opportunities, we need to update the programs. We either need to update the equipment in some cases or the facility in others. And this is due to industry standards and collegiate standards.
And alongside facility and equipment standards, we also looked into certifications. What kind of certifications are students going to receive when they finish these programs? So we looked at the A through F industry-based certifications that TA has approved right now. I believe there's 73 of them. So our numbers were, okay, how can we increase those numbers to help all schools, since all students who attend Riverside High School should receive some type of certifications. So in looking at some examples are cybersecurity. We're looking into CompTIA, Network Plus, A Plus, and Security Plus to help students achieve not only those programs while they're in high school, but help them attain a job after graduation. We also, how they mentioned, we have the first solar panel partnership in the nation. So one of the certification they're getting NAPCEP certification, which is a leading industry certification for solar energy. Another type of certification we're also offering is SolidWorks. SolidWorks works alongside with AutoCAD in engineering design, engineering process. So we're working to get those certifications to increase our A through F numbers as well.
Good evening. And I was recently hired in July as the Workplace Learning Coordinator. And the major focus of my position is to bring in that business and industry and facilitate those meetings so that we do have opportunities. We were just talking about how bogged down teachers are with lesson planning and all of those kinds of items. So my job is to bring in business and industry and facilitate those partnerships so that not only will the business and industry come to the classroom and help prepare our students, but they will also open up internships to us so that our students can go out into the workplace and practice these skills. Some of them are paid, some of them are non-paid. Some of them have pathways where they'll actually help them pay for additional certifications. But not just the students, our teachers as well, because teachers have been in the classroom. Maybe they've been out of the business and industry for a while, in particular for CTE. So those businesses will also provide that opportunity for the students to get updated as well, because the whole purpose of this is to have students that are very well prepared for the world of work and that they have relevant current skills so that they can go and start working at a job or a career, start focusing on the career and have that seamless transition to El Paso Community College. We're doing great things with partnerships. We have a lot of businesses that are knocking at our door that want to partner with us, and they're just not sure how to get that started, so that's what we're working on. Last year, we had Beltran Construction come to us and say, I want to start working with your teachers to start training your students so that I can hire them right out of high school because I don't have enough people or I can't keep enough people, or I want to train them the appropriate way so that we can go out after additional opportunities. Last week, our brand new teacher for cybersecurity attended an IT roundtable with me that was put on by Borderplex and TEALS and a couple of other partnerships, including UTEP, EPCC, and some of the other school districts. They're calling for computer science and cybersecurity. And one of the other partners that we're looking at is Prudential, not the insurance portion of it, but the information technology portion of it. They're ready to partner up with us. They're ready to come and meet with us on October 24th for our advisory board meeting. They are looking at opening internships, paid internships for our students, so that they not only are they training them on site, but they're also offering them small income so that they can continue these opportunities. So we're doing great things, and all of this is in preparation for our P-Tech Academy, and I will let Mr. Gunani talk more about it.
Thank you, Ceci. P-Tech is a designation similar to a STEM designation. Riverside High School and the Career Center are proud to announce that we're one of two in the region to receive the planning year designation out of TEA. Now, P-Tech, Pathways in Technology, Early College High School. Similar to an early college high school that you're familiar with at 3 of our campuses, it allows students while in high school to earn dual credit in pursuit of an associate's degree. In this case, it's in the area of trades, in which they will pursue an associate's degree of applied science. The eventual goal is that all programs will lead towards an associate's degree. That is the goal. The second component of a P-Tech Academy is that we partner with industry. And for all the reasons stated, in which students will receive actual employees or people who are working in those industries as mentors, will have the opportunity to have internships, and our teachers will have the opportunity to serve in externship opportunities to refine the craft. All these components put together make up a P-Tech Academy. Again, we're very pleased that we're one of 2 schools in the region to receive this designation planning year. Embedded in all our programs now, starting this year, is the financial literacy component. We realize, and we've known for a long time, many students walk out of high school and have the ability, have the skill, have the gumption to start their own companies, to start their own work, to go out and develop businesses and be their own boss. What was missing was a component of how to do this financially, how we were able to teach them. So working with the Chamber of Commerce, we borrowed, shared their curriculum on financial literacy. So all this is now embedded into every one of our programs. That, coupled with the master plan that EPCC has allowed us to be on the forefront of making the Career Center a viable option for many, many students within our district.
Okay, this is very exciting. I'm sorry if I get like too excited. Just tell me to chill. I'm very high energy right now. Okay, so you'll notice it up here that by 2021, EPCC projects their enrollment to be up to 30%. So this is great for YISD because we have an amazing opportunity before us. EPCC is in the process of building 2 new state-of-the-art facilities at their Valle Verde campus. One of them will house their STEM building. It will be for things like IT, cybersecurity, things along the STEM field pathway. And Riverside has an amazing opportunity as well because we're preparing students to feed right into that EPCC pathway. The second building that they're getting ready to build is automotive. Also an incredible opportunity for YISD because they have diesel, they have auto tech, they have collision, 3 programs that we currently offer at Riverside. But they also have hydraulics and logistics, which are 2 potential areas that the Career Center can expand out into. Now, this is important because it says on the slide, students who earn CTE credit are more likely to get a degree. If students already have dual credit hours in the CTE field, it's a natural transition to just go over to EPCC because they're already familiar with the instructors, they're familiar with the facilities, and essentially they've got that like little homegrown feeling there because they feel like EPCC is their home in addition to the Career Center at Riverside. And finally, you see that by 2020, 30% of the new jobs will require some type of an industry certification. You also heard earlier today that the state is going in that direction with the college and career military readiness. And so by offering these additional certifications for our students, not only are we preparing them high school-wise, but we're preparing them to be set up in a very good situation college-wise.
All right, so what does all this look like? Bottom line, it looks like a complete remodel of our existing facilities to include equipment and to include curriculum. These are some of the examples of what the modern facilities might look like. On the left, you'll see a modern bay, exactly what you would see, for example, at Shamali Ford or one of our dealerships. This is the learning environment our students would be exposed to. On the right, looks like an actual salon. This is exactly what our cosmetology students will be exposed to, having the identical work environment as they're learning. Some of the welding equipment, some of the bays on the left are exactly what we will be installing in the new welding and manufacturing area of our building. And to the right, what you see is the actual Franklin welding simulator that it's already been purchased through a grant with Endeavor, which as of Monday became Marathon Oil. This is one of the $65,000 equipment that was through a grant we were able to purchase. This is exactly what our kids will be learning on in all areas. This is the Franklin welding. So what we have here in the back and throughout is actual renditions of what the building's exterior and interior will look like. Robert, want to talk about?
Excuse me. We get him a mic.
Now I feel important. I can feel like the price is right. But anyway, so on the backside of vocational, this is an aerial view. You'll see that this will be completely redone, and because we want to make it a two-part entrance. So this is the backside. This is the west side, if you want to orient yourself. And what you'll notice here, this is the actual ground view of the west side. So this is the aerial view and the ground view. What Danny's going to show you is this backside, which will be the north side entrance, and that's what Danny has over there.
What we have here is the north side, the entrance to the culinary program. Embedded in this is a staff development room, seats up to 150 people, has meeting rooms, it has additional outside facilities, which is currently Cali Park, but it's an undeveloped section of our school. Through the designs and working with architects, we felt it was important to maximize space. And obviously, being able to combine an indoor and outdoor is very attractive. So again, dining room that can double as a staff development room for up to 150 people with the ability to move outside. If you move to this rendering, this is the inside. Walking in through these doors, you'll see something new. It's called the Bistro. This is the opportunity for our students to actually run a food store, a place where they sell and able to manage the things that they've baked or made and be able to sell to all students and anyone who is visiting the Career Center. This is an aerial view of the three sections that we're proposing. The 300, 400, and 700 hallways are what we are proposing be remodeled. All programs within these three hallways will get a complete remodel via facilities and equipment.
And one thing just to point out, if we didn't mention it earlier, we want to accentuate this point, is that in doing so, we're upgrading facilities, we're upgrading equipment, certifications, curriculum, but that'll help us being able to offer it in dual credit. So that'll strictly align us right with EPCC, and that'll be right in conjunction for those students to take those dual credit opportunities, and they can enroll right after high school and continue on and attain their associate's degree in that path.
So the bottom line, which I'm sure you guys are anxious, construction and renovation costs, according to architects and estimators, come in at $5.8 million. Instructional upgrades to equipment, including simulators, $2.5 million. With related costs, a total of $9.3 million. Again, this is a program where once we look past a university for all model and start thinking about a college for all model in which our students move past high school with the ability to gain additional training, obtain a certification, obtain associate's degree in applied science, move towards an area which may be their passion. This is the investment that we're looking at. Any questions?
Just one quick question. How many current CTE programs actually have dual credit aligned to them that we currently have in ours?
As of today, 4.
4. And how many are we hoping to get to eventually once we remodel?
6 more.
6 more, so 10 total?
10 out
Awesome.
of 11. The 11th one would be culinary, which there's no associates in culinary. There is an associates in business, though, which is what we're aiming for in that.
You said the business side of it, every class has a business aspect towards it. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that? Because I think Mike had brought up something about having a business class to be able to build your own business, create your own business, and then have that background, correct?
Exactly.
What was important to us is that students learn the aspects of running a business. So it's not a separate class, it's a curriculum that's embedded into their existing class. Again, we borrowed the curriculum from the Chamber of Commerce. Our teachers, with the help of our existing business teachers, roll out this curriculum to all students within the trades. Now, obviously, it's program specific. So a welder may learn opportunities within the welding field, pipe welders or different types of welding. You know, auto technicians will learn how to manage a business or how to start a business within the automotive. So it's program specific, but the idea is that all students will get the opportunity to learn financial responsibility and financial literacy in being able to be an entrepreneur, be able to be their own boss.
I feel that that part is you're teaching you're allowing them to acquire a trade but then you're leading them into how to fish in the financial aspect of it. And once you do that, then anything can happen. You know, oftentimes you see so many individuals that start and they have a certain amount of limited success. They could have gone a little bit further, but they're not familiar with balance sheets or profit and loss statements, maintaining the records to grow. And as they grow, some of them are real good.
Right.
And I know of a couple of exceptions that become multimillionaires, but oftentimes that doesn't happen because the preparation was not there.
Right.
And now we're doing it.
We're not going to leave it to chance.
Exactly. Very, very inclusive. And I appreciate that, Robert. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a couple of questions. One, do you currently have the faculty and staff to support the programs that you outlined in the previous slide? In other words, are there any needs relative to the expertise and the training of the teachers that you would need to implement that program, the human capital?
What we have now and all the programs, we're adequately staffed. In order to grow, obviously, we would add FTEs.
But that would be driven by enrollment, right?
Right. And student interest.
And for the sake of the board, when you say soft cost program allowance, that's almost $1 million is the soft costs. Are you speaking to the design team, architecture, surveyor, landscape, all of that?
Yes, sir. In working with Mr. O'Neill and the architects and in-house counsel, we were able to determine that this would be the estimated cost.
Yeah, he's become an expert in that recently. Soft costs. And then program allowance has to do with the curriculum that is tied to all of these programs?
Correct. Curriculum and also additional equipments that we may not have accounted for.
One of the things that the board was exposed to, or most of the board, maybe all of us, on Saturday was the emergence of electrical engineers, aeronautical engineers, computer programmers that in the aggregate all tie into that new industry of cybersecurity and things like that. As a district, and maybe this is more appropriate for Robert, do we have computer programming, coding, electrical engineering at all of our high schools, just a few of our high schools? Where are we at in that space?
So in realms of cybersecurity, we will be the first to offer it at Riverside, okay? And then we're exploring possible opportunities outside. There is computer coding. We have Girls That Code. We have that opportunity. I know at Parkland, we offer it. We offered it at several high schools.
Because the impression I got was that there is really no finite or definite cybersecurity curriculum, that cybersecurity is being addressed by pulling in physicists, electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, programmers, computer scientists, and that cybersecurity is the culmination or the compilation of all of these different fields who problem solve. So what was really, I think, cool was that apparently a month ago they tried to assassinate the president in Argentina using a drone. And so they invited these teams from Texas A&M, the Department of Defense, and the Military Institute. And the competition was based on 4 pillars: detect, intercept, assume control of, or destroy the drone that's bringing in the explosive device that's either intended to kill one individual or a group of individuals, and obviously you can't take it out over a group of individuals because then you ultimately do the work for the drone. But I couldn't help being fascinated by the idea that it takes all of these disciplines to come together and they each contribute something to the solution. And I think the board was really intrigued, and it gave us sort of a look into what the future looks like, and that is that people are going to have to work across curriculums and across disciplines to solve some of these complex problems because they've become so complicated and will require all of these different disciplines, with the major discipline being electrical engineers somehow. I don't know. I think that this is terrific. What I'd like to do is suggest to the board that this is a phase 1 entry-level conversion, remodernization, with the idea being that we would continue to explore and consider emerging disciplines, subjects, and then more importantly, figure out how we can get them together in co-curricular and extracurricular programs to go out and compete against other high school students and college students across the country.
So, to your point, Dr. Latorre, so you're talking
I just made all
about,
that up.
pathways and cross-curricular. So for example, I'll speak specifically on this one. We started the drone program over at Del Valle. They're the first. That doesn't mean they'll be the only one. So the cross-curricular there will be drone in conjunction with the fire tech program there at Del Valle, because you can use drones to actually go and monitor and detect and start that process. We're also going to look and explore, because our cybersecurity teacher just started this, 4 weeks ago. 4 weeks ago. So we got to build him into it. He's never been a teacher, but our vision for that program, we're going to look at the second semester is adding the drone component to that cybersecurity program. So to your point, Dr. Latorre, you can actually take various aspects of various programs and mesh them. One of the things that's not known, or we're widely known, is our law enforcement programs here. Here in this district, it's unique because we have law enforcement programs at every high school, and they're very strong and healthy. Bel Air and Hanks, best in the region. Put them up against anybody every year, year in and year out. They win. They have a ton of participation, and kids earn tons of certifications. However, you can actually even implement drone technology in that aspect, because of what you were describing there, Dr. Latorre. So this is just the tip of the iceberg, and we're looking at how we can do and expand on various programs. Now, keep that in mind, is that everything we want, we have to be very thoughtful and deliberate about how we're implementing these pathways, because the last thing we want to do is create a pathway with 20 kids. That is not a viable pathway, and that just doesn't make sense. We're talking about doing it right and sustaining and building with the numbers. And so that's why we want to really be really thoughtful and deliberate about how we're building these programs. And but that is a vision. The last piece I want to mention is there is a process of how we go about assessing these programs. Because although we may see a certain program that makes sense in that particular region of the state, maybe that job area is not really a market here. So we have to be really, really careful and thoughtful about how we're looking at the market analysis. Is it viable here in El Paso or within the region? And then the second thing is also looking at what is the changing structure of the industry? Because guess what? In 10 years from now, we're going to have to go back and revamp, because why? Jobs change, and we know that. So we're always have to be evolving. So we're going to continually be looking at these programs.
My primary interest is to make sure that that emerging program at Burgess High School, being led by this astute gentleman,
He's here as a mole.
I believe they call it the Formula One program over there, that we dominate in that area, and that they not also want weather balloons, rocketry, and missiles that we can launch at Burgess High School. Just kidding on the last one.
I just wanted to ask, since we're looking at making this investment, and I had talked a little bit to Mr. Bustillos this weekend about it, there is going to be a lot of room for growth and growing up Riverside. And we have in Bel Air a medical program. In Isleta, we have an early college. I had mentioned to him about the idea of possibly what you all would think of doing a magnet engineering program in Riverside, and doing something where really competing with Chapin and other areas that might have engineering, and really serving an area of the city that is underserved when it comes to engineering. And since we will have the capacity with this new development, and it goes to cybersecurity, engineering is always going to be a field of the future, no matter how engineering changes, providing our students at the Riverside campus a chance to draw in students from all over the city by offering engineering.
To his point, how is the solar program going at Riverside High School?
How is it growing?
Is it going? Is it
It's
growing?
going well. Initially, like anything else, we have to educate students as to what it is. They have a general idea, their parents have a general idea, but they weren't exactly sure that's the field for them. So we had to go out and educate all. We, this past year, educated every 10th grader in our district as to what it was, not only solar, but every program, what it was, and what are the opportunities that lie within each program. So once the education happened, kids were more excited and more apt to say, I want to try this. Being the only high school in the nation that certifies students at the high school level in NAPSIT was golden.
Excuse me.
Yes.
I want to say thank you for the information and doing in-depth analysis with the market analysis and things of that nature. And from my perspective, my humble perspective, $9.3 million, and I took an average of your 280 students that you currently have enrolled. So it cost about $33,214. An initial investment into these students, if we take the $9.3 million. So that's the initial investment, which I think is well worth it because on average, when we took the averages of all the potential earnings that these students can earn, it's about $41,512 yearly. So it's a good initial investment that will pay off in our community as a whole in El Paso in the future because these jobs aren't your norm. You're going into college and you're getting a 4-year degree. They're very needed. And not everybody is cut out for college. Not everybody's going to take that step. So I think it's a very important investment in our students, and I hope that we do consider this as a board.
Now, Ms. Lucero, to your point, the reason why we have such a large cost, you'll notice the instructional equipment upgrades. Remember, we talked about industry standards, so some of this equipment is very, very expensive, but our kids deserve that. Secondly, I know the numbers look small relative to now. However, our vision, for example, our current 11th graders that we inherited, we're at about 200. Those 11th graders next year will go up to 12th grade, and we anticipate bringing in another cohort of 200 plus. So very soon here, we'll have close to 400 to 450. Now, once we get to that point, and if God willing, everything goes as planned, and we get your approval, we'll have construction done, and then we'll have the capacity now to expand some of these programs.
I think it's a good initial investment, and it's well worth it.
One of the benefits that we have as a board is we've got obviously educators from other school districts and other school systems. I'm just curious, I've never visited the El Paso ISD, what's the term? The
CCTE, yeah, career.
Is that comparable? Is this better? I mean,
The difference between EPISD and Isleta is that all CCTE programs are housed at only CCTE. I know that in Isleta, we have a few that are spaced out in other, and even after we do this, we're still going to have a few that are spaced out at the other campuses, right? So pretty much all students from
are there any programs that El Paso ISD offers, CTE programs that we still don't offer either here or any of our other schools?
I think there's a few that we don't, but obviously Isleta has the solar one, which El Paso does, and of course,
But I think
there is no
it's a little
cybersecurity.
different too because they house a little bit of the health magnets too.
Oh, the health
The health
professions?
professions. So they go from Silva, and then you can, if they're overbooked, then they go to CCTE.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Or some of the health,
I also think they have a little bit more dual credit.
The other major difference, Dr. La Torre and the Board of Trustees, is that remember the law enforcement at EPISD, is my understanding, they go their first 2 years, and then all law enforcement upper level courses, 3rd and 4th year, are at the CCTE program. In our case, all our law enforcement programs are housed, and they're very vibrant, and they're doing really well at each of our high schools. We house that internal.
And that's my next question as far as, picking back off Mr. Kadir, is what is the plan? Are we going to continue to grow out, like say Socorro, where they have CCTE at each campus? Or are we going to continue to go through Riverside as a career center? Are we going to go through there? Or are we going to go to opening up other places at other schools? I'm just curious to see what route this is going to take as far as
What we've
CCTE.
determined over the past year is that it's more valuable to have the programs at the Career Center. Equipment-wise, it's more cost-effective to have one state-of-the-art program than 7 mini programs. Okay. Obviously, some programs are working at all campuses. Law enforcement, for example, is one. There's a big difference between a trades program and a CTE program. CTE, for example, is a 45-minute class students take daily. A trades program is a 3-hour commitment to a trade. So there's a difference. So at Riverside, we're fortunate we're able to blend a lot of the stuff. We're able to blend our engineering programs with our trades programs, with our CTE programs. We're fortunate in that aspect. To answer your question, the idea is to house the programs at the Career Center.
Is there ever a possibility in the future that we open up Del Valle or Bel Air's health to other schools?
The model that what makes Isleta Independent School District unique is that it was built on a community school model. And so one of the things that is both a benefit in the school district and can sometimes be detrimental is that we've historically and intentionally have wanted to have comprehensive high schools with less than 200 students in every neighborhood, and that's why we have 7. So when I was in Socorro, one of the things that we envied, for lack of a better word, was that we were trying to run high schools. In some cases, El Dorado High School had 3,800 students. Montwood had 3,400 students. Americus had 3,000 students. Socorro may have had 3,500 students. And the numbers were so significant that you could and you probably should have satellite programs around the district. YISD is so stretched out, and the idea has always been that the ideal enrollment for high school, the optimal enrollment for high school should be anywhere between 1,500 and 1,600 students, almost like neighborhood schools, right? And someone made the decision back there that they'd apply what's called a sort of a magnet program, a satellite program, where each of the 7 schools would be recognized for being the resident expert in one particular field because of the open enrollment environment. That means any student from any school can go to any other school, and so there aren't any impediments to stop students from doing that. So if someone's really interested in health professions, then they, like they do in Socorro, they would go to the Bel Air High School. In Socorro, they go to Socorro High School. I don't know if they've introduced a second Health Professions Academy at Socorro High School. I don't think so. Right?
It's at Americus.
Americus has opened another one, but it's because their schools are so large that they can't accommodate everybody at one school. I could see, as I think Danny said and Robert said, that there are some programs that are small enough and the cost is modest enough where you could have it at multiple schools. If you go all in on this, you have to remember you're dropping 9. When it's all said and done, it'll be $10 million. And someone on the outside may look in and say, let me get this right. And I think you did the math. You just spent $10 million on 400 kids. When you break that out on a per student basis,
Into Mike.
so the 400 students are 2 years. So I'm taking in all the juniors and the seniors without any increase in the number of students enrolled. And then typically 9th and 10th graders don't get into the program until they're at least either high-performing 10th graders or 11th graders. So when it's all said and done, whether it's 800 students or 1,000 students, it comes out to a significant per-student investment that, you know, that people could be critical of because it's a pretty big investment. And it can't accommodate all that many more students. In other words, it's being built for about 1,000 students. Am I right? So 1,000 students into 4.
I think second year or phase 2, we would be looking about 600, 650. And that would be doubling most of the programs.
So you have to kind of be sensitive to that, because to do that somewhere else would mean another $10 million investment at Parkland High School. To do it there, and again, it's limited to anywhere from 600 to 1,000 students. We have 12,000 high school students?
About 11,500. 11,500. Add our numbers.
Round this thing, round it up.
Hey, 500 count.
Yes, we have 12,000.
I stand corrected.
12,000. Sorry, it's because Susan was looking at me and she just...
Understood. Now, if it took off and people were in line and they were on waiting list, then I think it's something that you have to consider, either expanding that facility or opening another facility. But that's what was explained to me, and that was that way back in the day, someone said, in this school district, comprehensive high schools will remain small. They will be manageable. They'll do better academically. Everybody will know every student's name. And by the way, if they want any of these peripheral programs, everybody gets to be an expert in a program. I think there's probably less of that now, right? But I think what we're trying to do with this program is we're trying to get kids from down the street on Alameda to take an interest, come down. And I think the big key for this program will be relationships and partnerships with industry that says, if you complete a program in welding or pipe fitting at Riverside High School's Career Center, we guarantee you an entry-level job upon graduation. That is what I think attracts students to this kind of a program, whether they're in Eastwood or Parkland or anywhere else, Socorro, is the idea that, to your point, I'm not going to college. It's not for me. I want to go out and I want to make some money, and I want to make it when I graduate. That program does that, you know. And I think we still need to work out some of the bugs and look at some of the other programs and think about aeronautical engineering and cybersecurity and some of the things that may sound a little more sexy. But for a phase one, I'm impressed. It's a good first step. It's expensive.
Dr. De La Torre, oh, go ahead.
I just want to say, this is a good first step, and it's a worthwhile risk to take. And being that we are a district of innovation, we might have done things a certain way, but we're open to be innovative. We're close.
We're unofficially the most innovative school district in the area. We may even get bold and start the school year off a week early.
Question, Dr. De La Torre. Do you think we would benefit from having a counselor? How would we benefit if we had a counselor with them? And here's the thing is that when we first started, I think you guys went, it was a process because we had to educate a lot of the principals, telling them, hey, we're not going to take from your funds because we're taking these kids. And I think obviously the counselors know the kids, right? And if we have a counselor at the CCT, at the Career Center, you know, they're able to reach out to more kids in the district to bring them out to our facilities. We're able to, the kids that we're missing, in other words, we have a counselor that'll help them out on that.
Now, what you'll probably do is go out to all of the middle schools and you'll make presentations at all the middle schools. The counselor is important. The element that I think is more important than even the counselor is that liaison between that school and all of the industry reps. The one that goes out and says, y'all want to get involved? I need internships, paid, unpaid. I need experiences for kids. I need jobs, guaranteed jobs when they graduate from this program. I need resources, right? If you happen to be at BMW on Montana and you're going to get rid of some of your equipment, our expectation would be that you consider giving it to us before you get rid of it. That kind of a person that's just out in the community promoting the heck out of. It's after 8:30, they're all in bed. Promoting the heck out of this as being how you go into industry without necessarily going to Western Tech or colleges and universities out of high school. And having a partnership with Western Tech. And I know you do, and you've talked about the HVAC and all of that. The counseling, I think it's important that all of the schools that it be in the course catalog, but I really think that a high energy, dynamic, get out, get into memorandums of understanding and agreements with as many industry leaders as possible. Kind of like the work you did with VJ. I mean, that's amazing stuff. There have got to be more VJs out there.
Well, Dr. De La Torre, I think one of the things that Danny I talked about, Danny brought up a good idea that when we graduate our CTE kids, we have a signing day. And what they do is we bring in the company and endorse them, and we have the kids come in, and we have a signing day for them going on to work with the partnerships that we're making. And I think Danny brought up a good idea to do that at the end.
It's a great idea, and at the end, you put up some kind of a slide or a banner that says today, and I'll use Endeavor guaranteed in excess of $342,000 in annual salary to 11 students.
Right.
Something
and they
like
have
that.
a signing day, and then Endeavor's there.
Yep.
Receiving their kids. That's all Danny's idea right there.
But one of the sobering stats is this past year, this recruiting class of juniors, almost 500 students applied. Of 200 qualified. means our students throughout our district are not readying themselves to be part of this program. They have to have so many credit hours by the end of the sophomore years to be able to take on a block class. It takes a lot of their schedule, their junior and senior year, so they have to be ready by the end of the
We
sophomore.
need to talk to people.
A counselor, Mr. G, and myself, and all our teachers who go out and talk to eighth graders, we emphasize this. We emphasize the need to not start slow, but start fast. Have a vision of where you want to end up so that you ready yourselves, your freshman and sophomore years, to be able to be part of this program.
Mr. Ochoa?
Well, first of all, let me say that I think this whole presentation today is something I'm excited about. I traveled all over the country before I was a teacher. I was an engineer, and I got to meet all kinds of people from all parts of the country. And one thing I know is that here in El Paso, we are just as good as anybody else in the country. I mean, we are just as smart, we are just as capable. The one thing I did learn is that El Paso, we're like an island. We don't have anybody to come and support us, give us the support that all these other big cities have. Those internships and everything else, I mean, they just go, those states are so close together that it's no big deal. For us to have an internship somewhere else, it's not gonna happen. So, and having saying that, I think Isleta and with this program, we're in the forefront of taking care of ourselves, taking care of our students, taking care of our community, taking care of El Paso. If we do this, I know this is first phase, but I see big things down in the future. Cybersecurity, engineering, aeronautics, those are all future. Well, they're now here, but they're going to still be in the future. And I can tell you, based on cybersecurity, remember that presentation from NSA, that gentleman that said, right now, if you give them any kind of training in cybersecurity, we will hire them when they come right out of high school. And because we're so short on personnel like that. So I'm just so happy that we are doing this. I think we at Isleta are risk takers, but we're risk takers with some, we know what's good. So I commend you all for this presentation. I have nothing bad to say about it. So,
come on,
thank you.
Cruz.
That's all I wanted to say.
No, one thing I would like to add, and something just came to mind, the fact is Microsoft is here, and we are teamed up with them. So it's just a matter of how do we maneuver ourselves in a position where we can let Microsoft know what we're doing. All right, you're all familiar with all this, right?
That's Ceci's job right there, right?
You have to talk into the mic.
IT roundtables, and they're a part of it. And there's another group called TEALS. And so we've been having those discussions. So we're already in communication with them, and they already have some resources available that we're going to be tapping into.
Things, and I've mentioned this before, but in the taxation of our community, 70% comes out of the residential, 30 is business. That is what we need to grow by undertaking these type of initiatives. Yep. Yeah, it's going to be bold. Yeah, we're going to spend $9 million, but I think as things evolve, and let's face it, there's going to be a certain amount of individuals that go through the program. They want to leave El Paso. I understand that, but there's a whole bunch of them that would like to stay here because of the roots, the connections, the family, and on and on. I think it's an investment well deserved of our
And they can
district.
start their own business. The topic at the last Chamber of Commerce meetings for education and workforce development was entrepreneurship. So all of those discussions are being held across the city, and we're participating in them.
I agree.
That sounds like a to me, I'm just super excited about everything that I'm hearing. And I think that what you can take back to Riverside is that you've got some support here, that we're looking into the future with you. So,
Excellent. Well, we truly appreciate all the work you do and the efforts and the support you've given us and our students. Thank you.
thank you very much.
Just as a closing comment, $9.3 million is $9.3 million. We don't have it in our operating budget. We may have some residual bond money that we can invest in this project. There's a possibility that we may have some fund balance money that we can contribute to this, and we may be able to piece together a plan for the board to consider to pay for the remodernization or the remodeling of Riverside High School to support the career tech ed. I just wanted to make sure that everyone understood that it's a great program. We support the program, but Ms. Leeper and I, Mr. O'Neill, and others, we have to sit down and sharpen the pencil and decide where do you find $9-10 million to do this, and can you do it over a year, or is it a 2-year process? As we talked about earlier, we're a little bit, well, not a little bit, we're aware of the fact that healthcare in a year and a half could go up. We want to continue and compensate our employees every year. We want to make sure that the holiday bonus is something that is unique to this school district. So we have competing interests, and we'll take all of that into consideration and come back with some options for the board to think about relative to how we would finance something like this. The idea would be that this school would open as it stands right now in the fall of 2020.
Sounds like we have some work to do, but yet it's promising, exciting work, and I can't wait to see what we come up with. So if there's no more questions, may I have a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
Thank you.